Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to be talking all about Pokémon Let's Go Eevee and Pokémon Let's Go Pikachu. Those two Pokemon games that have actually been announced now. We're going to be looking at the games as a whole and where they fit in with the Pokemon franchise, but we're also going to be focusing on how these games are not Pokemon Switch and how, you know, it's not indicative of how Pokemon Switch is going to be or anything like that. You'll see. But anyway, enough waffling, let's dive right into things. So, Pokemon Let's Go Eevee and Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu, or whichever way you want to do it. Pokemon, I'm just going to probably refer to them as Let's Go for the sake of this video. Yeah, they look pretty much how they were, leaked, you know, all the information seemed to be pretty much true, you know, it seems to be inspired partly by Pokemon Go and things like that. What people were worried about was the fact that it was going to be Generation 8, but that is not the case. The Pokemon Company have said, you know, absolutely, to make absolute certain that this is not Generation 8, this is a, well, they say it's not a spin-off title, but for the sake of ease, I'm going to say it's a spin-off title. We'll talk more about that later. Probably. Empirically, this is not Generation 8. Generation 8 will be coming out in the latter half of 2019. They have said that officially. That is not hearsay. That is not me, you know, sort of saying, oh, I'm sure it will be. It is absolutely 100% confirmed. So these games, Let's Go games, are not Generation 8. This is not the new direction Pokemon is going, at least for the core series. I was very, very worried that they would be, you know, sort of the new direction for Pokemon, you know, new mechanics and trying to open it up to a broader audience, which is fine, but from what we understood, you know, with like the Pokemon Go mechanics for like throwing Pokeballs and stuff, it didn't sound like a good direction in my opinion. The fact that it is not a mainline game, I mean, that makes... I'm generally fine with it. I think, you know, it's fine. It's a nice little idea. I think some people are seeing it as a stopgap, you know, something to fill the schedule and to keep Pokemon alive on the Switch and to give Switch owners something Pokemon related that's actually pretty meaty and not Pokemon Quest, because have you played that? It's not a lot to it. So the Switch owners have got something before Pokemon Switch eventually comes out, Generation 8. And yeah, I can kind of see that. I think maybe they partly developed, because it almost looks like this is the engine that we're going to get for the most part for Generation 8. I really wouldn't be surprised if that were the case. Because it's, you know, it's in HD, it seems to have all the normals, to a degree, the normal mechanics of a Pokemon game, or at least the bare bones to have these mechanics placed on top of. So yeah, I can see that being, you know, this is just sort of like a mini version of Pokemon that we're getting to tide us over, but I think it's more than that. I think it is far, far more than that. When I first saw the announcement, when I first woke up this morning, and I watched the trailer in silence so as not to wake my sleeping girlfriend, I generally saw it and I thought, yeah, this looks fine, and I thought to myself, do you know what? This is halfway between Pokemon Go and a mainline Pokemon game. And I can see why they're doing that, because this is a perfect stepping stone between the two, because Pokemon Go was massive, and I think it still is pretty damn big. A lot of people seem to think, oh, it's died a death, but I think it is still played by an awful lot of people. Although, interestingly, the people that I know that still play Pokemon Go are mainly people who don't play video games very often. They are what I suppose you might call the casual market. All the people that I know that used to play Pokemon Go, myself included, who still play video games and, you know, own a Switch or something like that, or play PC, or PS4, or Xbox One, or anything like that, they generally seem to have gone off Pokemon Go, or at least just maybe not gone off and don't necessarily dislike it, but just haven't found much to keep them going. That's obviously only my experience and is not the general rule. It's a very broad thing to say, but nevertheless, you know, that does seem to be the case from what I understand. And so they're trying to, you know, I think they're trying to get people to go from Pokemon Go to Pokemon Let's Go to Pokemon mainline series. You know, it's that stepping stone. It's introducing people who haven't played Pokemon mainline, or, you know, maybe played it when they were younger and haven't played it since, into the new modern games. My boss is a classic example. I was chatting to him this morning, and he was saying that he was, you know, genuinely going to get Pokemon Let's Go because he's never played a Pokemon game, at least properly. He told me that when it came out, he was in his mid to late teens, so it really wasn't his kind of thing. It wasn't aimed towards him. It seemed a bit too childish, a bit too kiddie, and so it didn't really appeal to him. And as this series grew up, it grew up with that core audience, that sort of generation of players, which was my generation, which is why I really love Pokemon. But it didn't ever really try and appeal to the older generation, except for maybe certain things like XD Gale of Darkness, maybe. I don't know, but that really is pushing it. And yet today, the idea of jumping straight in with something like Ultra Sun or Ultra Moon, you know, the newest Pokemon games that are, you know, properly designed, properly modern, which fits in with the sensibilities that we have, rather than going back to retro games, which, you know, the old Pokemon games are fine, but they have aged. They're still perfectly playable, of course, but they're not a new game, obviously. So to jump in with something like Sun and Moon or Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon or even X and Y, something like that, it's a big leap. There are a lot of mechanics to learn in Pokemon. It is not an easy game to pick up. If you've been playing Pokemon all your life, then you've sort of learned progressively all these new things. You've picked up information about IVs and EVs, and you've picked up information, you know, you've learned about Z moves, and you've learned about Mega Evolutions and stuff like that. You know this. You know it because you've learned it over the course of many, many years. For somebody brand new going into the game, it's too much information, it's too much going on, too many mechanics, too many things to learn. It's off-putting. You don't really want to invest in all that if you don't have a huge amount of interest. And I can, yeah, it would put you off. I know it would put me off. And therein lies where Let's Go really has a really good footing in all this, because it is a stripped-down, sort of a simplified version of the core Pokemon mechanics, with that sort of easy introduction of, oh, you played Pokemon Go. It's just like that, but there's more to it. It's like a meaty, it's Pokemon Go Plus? No, that's something else. But it's that stepping stone, it's that entry, it's a gateway into the main Pokemon franchise without being too overwhelming and having too many mechanics to learn. It's just a simplified version, and it's very approachable. There are only 151 Pokemon, the original 151, of course, and apparently a brand new one that's never been seen before, which I'm sure we haven't, because they've really tried to push that. So you can get into Pokemon without being massively overwhelmed, and I think that probably is, for the mainline Pokemon series, the biggest barrier that they have. The original games were relatively complex to begin with, and they've only built on that over time, and so for somebody new to the series, it's a bit like jumping into, say, Monster Hunter for the first time. If you try to do that, it's very overwhelming. You can do it, obviously you can do it, and if you're willing to put the time and effort in, you can do it, not easily, but you can do it. But if you've only got a passing interest and you just sort of think, well, it's so popular, what is it, you know, what is it that makes it so popular? You're going to be put off. So that's where I think this really is strongest. It's a game that allows you to get into the mainline Pokemon games without diving headfirst into it all. And I think that's a really good thing. And also, the game itself, if you take a step back and stop, you know, realize that it is not Generation 8, it is not the new direction for the Pokemon series. It's not a core game. They're saying it's mainline, but they're not saying it's core, or the other way around. It's meaningless. Basically what they're saying is it's not a spin-off, but it's definitely a spin-off. It's a spin-off more like Colosseum and XD Gales of Darkness. I think it looks great. I think graphically it looks amazing. It really pops. The colors are beautiful. The sprite work. Blah. The models look amazing. It just looks like a really, really well-refined game. It's just what you'd expect to see Pokemon in HD, and we've been waiting for a chuffing long time for it. It's great to see it finally appear as is. And mechanically, obviously, it's simpler, and I'm used to the whole sort of complex mechanics and, you know, IVs, EVs, and all that stuff. But sometimes I don't want all that complexity, and I would quite like the idea of going back to something a little bit simpler, with a modern sort of take on everything. And yeah, I think it looks like it could be good fun. I don't think I'm going to sink the same amount of time into it as I would a mainline Pokemon game, but, you know, for a little aside, you know, something like, you know, like a stopgap, as many people are calling it, to tide people over, yeah, I can see it being really quite good fun. And I think the co-op and everything that you have in there could be a nice little aside as well. You know, I could just sit on the sofa, one Joy-Con each, me and my girlfriend Sasha, you know, we're playing, and, you know, we're playing co-op and stuff like that. We don't play that much co-op anymore, because a lot of them are either too competitive or too engrossing, and generally in the evenings we just want to relax. And so I can see us doing that pretty easily. I can see us enjoying it, is what I'm trying to say. I'm well aware that there are a lot of people out there that don't like the look of these games, and to be honest, when I heard about them, you know, I think some people are maybe running to the comments already, or maybe have already been saying, Alex, you made a joke about it being called Pokemon Let's Go Kill the Franchise. And yes, that's when I believed that it was Generation 8 and that they were essentially stopping the mainline Pokemon games and replacing it with this gameplay. But as this is in addition to, it's absolutely fine. It's not changing anything. It's just additional. It's like people are talking about things like, to use a weak analogy, the Star Wars spin-off films like Rogue One and Solo. I haven't seen Solo yet, but they say, oh, you know, it's spoiling Star Wars. It's not. It's purely an addition. If you don't want to pay attention to it, you don't want to have to watch it. It all takes place in the past. You don't have to watch it. It's just an additional thing. It's just bonus. It's just extra stuff. You don't need it, and it doesn't impact what already exists. If you don't want to watch these new things, you don't have to. It's as simple as that. If you don't want to play Pokemon Let's Go, you don't have to. There's still going to be a Generation 8. It's still coming out on the Switch. It's going to be Pokemon Switch, as we've been, you know, referring to it and all that stuff. It's still happening. It's just not happening just yet. It's happening next year, the end of next year, and it's gonna be the new Pokemon game that all the core fans are really looking forward to. All the really hardcore people wanting that hardcore experience, you're gonna get it. You're just gonna have to wait a little bit longer, and if you want something Pokemon related in HD on the Switch, you can pay Pokemon Let's Go to tide you over. And I think that's fine. But what do you think? Let us know your thoughts about Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Pokemon Let's Go Eevee down there in the comments. But do remember to be respectful, and if you don't like these games, you don't have to play them. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you say let's go to that subscribe button? And be sure to check out NintendoLife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you go to that that's terrible.